So this story was submitted by Patreon supporter Joshua Blanco, basically about how Hurricane Irma is about to hit landfall. Today is Saturday, September 9th. It's already, I believe, if it hasn't hit landfall, it's about to hit in South Florida. It's already come through Cuba. And the article is in npr.org, and it is saying basically the poor people in Miami don't have the money to go out and buy hurricane supplies. And people with money, they're already, the stores are flooded and they're running out of supplies. So people have been warning about this. What are we going to do when natural disasters hit? Who's going to get hurt the worst is the poor. The poor don't have the money to go have disaster supplies and stuff like that. They're living and I've done articles, numerous videos about how people are living paycheck to paycheck, and how are they supposed to, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, how are you supposed to then go buy a couple $100s in food to get you through 3-4 days when everything, if they don't even have the money to evacuate? And it's the one thing that Joshua Blanco points out in this NPR article, there's no mention of climate change in this. They're just talking about the poor, which is good. I'm glad this article is out there, and I'm glad, Joshua, that you sent it in to me to put it out for more people to hear about this issue. But we've had, 2 Category 5 hurricanes come up? Henry and Irma now? And then there's a third one, I guess? And we can't talk about climate change because that politicizes it. It's pretty preposterous. So I'm going to go into some of the details here, the statistics in this article. And again, I'll put it in the link in the YouTube notes. One of the people they interview is this man, Eugene Johnson, who purchased 2 loaves of bread and batteries for his flashlight. That's it. Those are his supplies for Hurricane Irma. I'm on a fixed income, said Johnson. This hit me out of the blue. I had to pay rent, my electric bill, and stuff like that. In his kitchen cabinet, he already had a few cans of tuna, and he plans to boil some eggs. Richest country in the history of the world. Richest country in the history of the world. Miami-Dade County, which has about 3 million residents, 530,000 of them are living below the poverty line. What are they supposed to do? If you have money and a decent car and everything, it's a lot to deal with a hurricane. It's a lot to deal with. And if you don't have those things, what are you supposed to do? I mean, I'm an American Red Cross disaster volunteer, and they're asking for 1,500 people to be willing to deploy to Houston, to the Texas area, for what happened from Harvey. 1,500 people from the state of California. They want 1,500. Now there's going to be a bunch we're going to need to go to Florida. I'm volunteering a shift this coming week just because they need people in the office dealing with that. This is the American Red Cross. The federal government isn't ready. This guy, Eugene Johnson, is 65 years old. He lives in an affordable housing complex in Miami, and like many of his neighbors who are also on fixed income, he doesn't own a car. He's on fixed income and doesn't own a car, probably takes public transportation. How is he supposed to evacuate? Who's getting him out of there? He can't. He just has to ride it out with bread and tuna and eggs. And he said even without a car, it was really hard for him to go just get hurricane supplies. To me, this is inexcusable that this country can't help its least fortunate people. It's inexcusable. I remember when, Katrina? The one that hit New Orleans and Mississippi and all that. And I remember seeing people, there's digging through cans just on the street. I was like, this is America? And I remember I was down there. I was working in New Orleans a year later. I was doing comedy at the Improv there that was at the Harrah's Casino, and I went and volunteered for this organization called Common Ground that was in the Ninth Ward. And it was like me and this one college kid, this girl that came there and decided to stay, and then some nursing students gutting houses. And this was a year later. I remember just going, this is the best America can do, is like a comedian and a half a dozen college kids. We don't have the money to just come in and that was 10 years ago. Over 10 years ago. 2006? Yeah. That hurricane was 2005, and then 2006 was when. So, and they're asking these people, because there's a small group of community activists and non-for-profit employees who get together to discuss poverty and hurricane preparation. And one of them, Valencia Gunder, a community activist in Liberty City, how can we get resources to help them before the storm? Are there any resources from larger institutions to help them purchase these things? It's way too late, said Maggie Fernandez from the Miami Climate Alliance. She said, local institutions have failed the most vulnerable as a Category 4 hurricane barrels towards the state. It was a 5. Then when it hit land in Cuba, I believe it went down to like a 3. Then it picked up steam between Cuba and like near the Keys, back over water. It picked up strength again, so it's going to hit as a 4. That's a pretty severe hurricane, Category 4. What they ask you to do is to be completely self-sufficient for the first 72 hours. So you should have food, water, medical supplies, whatever, so you can be self-sustaining for 3 days. Now, we say that here in California. This is an earthquake area, obviously, and the American Red Cross in disaster preparedness, one of the things they do, and I would suggest going to the American Red Cross, redcross.org, and look at disaster preparedness. If you're in a place that has any sort of natural disasters, be prepared. And you need food and water, because assume there's no electricity. Assume that water won't be drinkable. Assume you won't have gas to cook anything. So all the food in your fridge, the perishable food, is going to go bad in a matter of hours, and definitely won't be good within a day. Within 24 hours, everything in your fridge is going to be no good. So you have to eat that first. But I would go get a list of things to be prepared for, and I have it because I live in an earthquake. I have a disaster kit in the back of my car, and I have one in my home. I have a first aid kit. I have a flashlight. I have a helmet. I have all kinds of stuff because, again, structures get, and a big earthquake is coming to California. There's 100%. It's coming. They've predicted there's 100% probability of 5.0 or greater is hitting California. It's not if, it's when. But again, going back to the story, how are these poor people supposed to do this? So a hurricane, you have some prep time. This hurricane's coming. You got 3-4 days to go get stuff. How can you do that? And they're saying don't depend on the government for help. If you're able to sustain yourself for 3 days, you're already ahead of the game. But what do these people living below the poverty line do that don't have car? What do they do? Families who can't do that must wait and see when relief comes, and sometimes that can mean several days. After Hurricane Harvey devastated Houston last month, many families reported they were stranded with no food or water for days. For days. Buy dry food that doesn't need to be refrigerated, doesn't need to be cooked. Robinson Fenelon, who grew up in Miami's Little Haiti neighborhood, said his family could never really prepare during hurricane warnings because they were too poor. What are we supposed to do? In the bottom of this link, of this article, are disaster distress hotline links, find a nearest shelter, and find out if you're in an evacuation zone. So if anyone is watching this in Florida and you haven't already evacuated, or you don't know what you can do, or you don't have the resources to get out, there's some links in this article below to help you out with that. If you live anywhere that has any sort of natural disasters, get prepared. Get a disaster kit. Get everything you need. You can start. I used to teach disaster preparedness classes for the American Red Cross. I'll do a video on it. A separate video on it. But one thing you can just start to do is, people are like, man, I don't have the money. I got to spend. I don't want to spend. You don't have to spend a lot of money. You just grab an old backpack, a duffel bag you're not using, and just start putting some stuff in there. Granola bars, toothbrush, toothpaste, some bottled water. Just get a couple cases of bottled water. Put one in your car. Put one in your house. Then you have fresh water. grab a little first aid kit, whatever. But if you took a bag, a duffel bag or a backpack, and went through your house right now, you could put some dry food in there. A couple cans of thing, make sure that it either has a pop top or you put an extra can opener in there. You could just start right now. Thermos, fill it up with a water, put it in there, and that's already you're better than nothing. You have better than nothing. So that because just assume that when a natural big disaster hits, the resources of the police and the fire department and the rescue people are going to be maxed out, and they're going to go where the need is the greatest. So if you're just all alone, what are you going to do? You're trapped in your car. What are you going to do? So please get prepared. I will do a separate video on this about disaster preparedness. I promise you. But thank you for watching the show, and thank you, Joshua Blanco, and all the Patreon backers. It's another reason we got to get a progressive in there to get the Green New Deal, because these earthquakes and natural disasters are just going to get worse. And then the federal government has spent all that money on war and drone strikes and bombing civilians in the Middle East that we don't have the infrastructure to handle these type of things when they do happen. And the environment is making them more powerful, as I've talked about. If you're in Florida, stay safe. If you're in Houston, I hope you're doing better. And thank you for watching the show.